Could a Tradeback Marowak with the move Swords Dance beat the entire game of Pokemon Yellow, ideally on minimum battles? Let's find out. Look at the stats right here. We are ranked 75th out of 151 Pokemon. This is like dead in the middle with a base stat total of 345, so it's nothing to write home about. And outside of a really good 110 defense stat and a kind of decent 80 base attack, everything else is trash here. 50 base special, 45 base speed, 60 base HP, only an 8.79% critical hit chance, medium fast level up group, so it just really doesn't have much going for it. But there is one thing that I think could save this Pokemon, which is in Gen 2, it added an egg move, which was Swords Dance. Everybody knows that Gen 2 Marowak with its Stick Club and Swords Dance was kind of a beast in competitive. Since it is a legal move from Gen 2, via breeding, we could simply have bred this move onto this Pokemon and then traded it back. That's what we're going to find out today. Professor Oak's going to run out of town. He's going to see a ghost. He's going to catch the ghost. That's right, because we don't have the Sylph Scope. The game thinks that Marowak is a ghost. And he's not going to ask any questions. His grandson's just going to push us out of the way and he's going to give us a free Marowak. That's right. And not just any Marowak. No, this is Ghosty Mama coming in here with level 5, 22 HP, 13 attack, 16 defense, 10 speed, 10 special. 0 DVs will come in after we level up. But most importantly, we have Bone Club, Tail Whip, and Swords Dance on this moveset. Let's see if we can get through the rival and how we do as we go through the game. So first up, Rival 1, it's time for him to feel a little bit of fear here. We're going to give him a Tail Whip. We trade Tail Whips turn 1, but now Bone Club is an easy 2-hit KO. And just like that, we have made it through Rival 1. What a joke. And since this is a 0 DVs Marowak, it is actually a her. Funny enough, even though there's no genders in Gen 1, if we traded it to Gen 2, it would be a female Marowak. So Cubone's mother is getting her chance for revenge on the entirety of Kanto. Let's go. But now it's time for the first challenge of this run, because we actually have to beat a Caterpie here, and Caterpie resists our ground type move in Bone Club. So normally this would be kind of a tedious fight at the very least, but let's see if we can get through with the help of Swords Dance. So I'm simply going to set up 3 Swords Dances right here. We're going to see our attack stat just skyrocket, and now Bone Club is basically looking like a 2-hit KO there as we easily defeat that trainer. And with that done, it's time to get straight to the Brock fight, where our type advantage might just make this a cakewalk. So here we're going to introduce Brock's Pokemon to the Bone Club, but first things first, we should Swords Dance a few times. Let's just get as much power as we can. And now Bone Club is a 1-hit KO on Geodude. We level up to level 8, and here he goes for Bide. We don't even care. It's a 1-hitter with Bone Club on the Onix, and in 3 minutes and 57 seconds, we have beaten the first gym. But from here, this run's only going to get more difficult, because Kanto kind of hates ground types. We are going to be dealing with not only Misty, who's coming up very soon, we're also going to be dealing with opponents like Erica, opponents like Lorelei, opponents like Lance, and of course the rival's always going to have Pokemon that have super effective moves against us with his Cloyster, so we might just need a lot of luck to get through this run. But the other factor is that because this is a traded Pokemon, it's now become disobedient the second that we got over level 10, and that means that we can no longer reliably set everything up, and instead sometimes it's going to use the wrong moves, or it's just simply going to not move for an entire turn. When we land hits, we will do significant damage to our opponents, but it's always just a question of whether or not we can land the hit before they knock us out. But now as we make it to Mount Moon, we're going to be able to see one of the factors that makes this Pokemon very different from other ground type Pokemon. The fact that it has a really wide moveset. It can learn both Water Gun and Mega Punch in this section of the game, and since Mega Punch is another strong physical move, I'm simply going to learn it right here. We have the Water Gun to also give us a little bit more coverage in certain situations, but the key point really is just that if we can use Swords Dance and Mega Punch even, we're going to be doing really good damage to most opponents. So with that, let's get into the Super Nerd fight, where we're just kind of praying for the luck to actually land Bone Club, because once we do, these should be 1-hit KOs, and sure enough, we get all the way to the final coughing here, where a single Bone Club knocks it out. And with that, we can take the Dome Fossil, because you gotta protect your dome, guys. Look at at the skull on top of the head of our Marowak. Of course, it knows that it has to protect its dome. So now we can take on Jesse and James, and this shouldn't be hard as long as we use the right moves. Bone Club one-shots there on the Ekans. Here we get a growl from the Meowth, which is kind of bad, and we use Water Gun by mistake, and we just need our Pokemon to actually use the moves that we ask it to use. This is the problem with Disobedience. This should be an insanely easy fight, and yet we can lose it by simply using the wrong moves. This time we get through the Meowth though, so we just need to land a Bone Club. It's not quite enough to one-shot the Coughing without a Swords Dance, but we knock it out on the next turn and get to level 17. And at this point, we could of course go and try to fight against Misty, but she's probably not going to be possible at our current level. So after a few attempts, we do finally beat that junior trainer and get a level up right there. But now it's time to go ahead and fight against Rival 2, where we just have to hope to get crazy good luck to use the right moves. So we're going to lead off trying to go for Swords Dance. Of course, it's all just a matter of whether or not our Pokemon actually does what we want it to. But here we do knock out the first Spearow, and we can learn Headbutt. I'm actually going to learn Headbutt over Water Gun. I'd rather have more physical moves to use together with Swords Dance here. So we do manage to knock out the Sandshrew, but we did not have enough HP to get through the rest of the team. A couple of attempts later, we easily get through to the Eevee, but now we're getting Sand attacked, and we really just need to be able to land a hit that will actually damage our opponent, but we randomly knock ourselves out in confusion because we are disobedient. And the issue here is that we can't regain obedience until we manage to beat Misty. Misty will raise the obedience of our Pokemon up to level 30, but until then, we're just kind of praying that we use the right moves in every single fight, and it's really not guaranteed. What should be an incredibly simple fight, simply set up a couple Swords Dances and sweep, turns into a nightmare here against Rival 2. However, with two Swords Dances set up, when we can actually use a move like Mega Punch here, we're going to do massive damage as long as the move hits. The problem is this Eevee likes to use Sand Attack, and so we end up just not being able to hit a bunch of turns until it knocks us out. And here, when we finally get the Mega Punch on the Eevee, it goes down in a single hit, and we have made it through Rival 2, but that took a ton of resets. We're all the way up to 16 resets so far in this run, and it's kind of par for the course when you've got a disobedient Pokemon. But with that out of the way, the rest of the Nugget Bridge is really not too much difficulty for us. We had one reset just to getting confused and hitting ourselves in confusion, but I think we can simply get through everything at this point as long as we land the right move. It should always be a one-hit KO, and since these other trainers don't have moves nearly as strong as Rival 2, we're pretty golden to just get through this section. So we can make it to Bill's house, we can say, hey, what's up, how's it going? Look at my ghosty mama. He's gonna say, that is weirder than what I just combined myself with. I think he was trying to be an Eevee, guys. Check his PC, check his search history, guys. He's been looking at the evolutions. We know what he's all about. But now we can take on a very important fight in this run in order to get one of the most important moves in the game for this Marowak. The Innocent Bystander is going to give us access to Dig as soon as we finally manage to win this fight. So I think we just need to get the luck to get through this, and then we're basically good to go. And once we land the hits, we easily get through and get to level 24, and we have the Dig TM. I'm going to teach this to Ghosty Mama, and we're going to learn this over Mega Punch. Dig is a 100 base power, 100% accurate ground type move, giving us effectively our strongest move in the game. We could replace it with Earthquake later on if we decide that we don't want to take 2 turns every single time that we attack our opponents, but since in Gen 1, Dig and Earthquake have the exact same power, this is effectively the best same type move we're going to get in the entire run. And with that, we can simply take on a couple of easy trainers. We're going to go to the SSN first because of the fact that we really need to get as much XP as we possibly can before we try to take on Misty. But now we need to talk about how Disobedience actually works in the Pokemon games. It's not just that your Pokemon becomes disobedient and then its moves become kind of random. It actually becomes more disobedient the more you over level past the last level that it was obedient at. Since our Ghosty Mama was last obedient at level 10, we're now 14 levels higher than that. And with those extra 14 levels, it's basically making it so that this Pokemon almost never wants to obey what we do. This was put in this way so that you couldn't just trade a level 100 Pokemon back to your game at the very start and just use it to completely crush everything. But the impact is that Disobedience is so incredibly bad in Generation 1 in particular. It even caused Game Freak to go back in later gens and make it so that that even the first badge would raise obedience to something like level 20, just so that you would actually have a chance when you were using a Tradeback Pokemon. Because without it, fights start to look like this, where even against just 3 random Pidgeys, they become basically impossible to beat with this Pokemon. So it took tons of attempts just to get through that Pidgey girl, and now we can move on in the run, but still this was pretty darn terrible. But with those trainers out of the way, we can make our way to the SSN, where we only have to pick up a couple of items, and then it's time to get straight to the Rival 3 fight, where yet again he has the same team as before. They're just smarter, quote unquote, but we should be able to get through this with the right kind of luck. So here against Rival 3, I think first things first, we need to get at least one Swords Dance, and the fact that he's growling at us so much is kind of terrible. But once we get the hit on, we can actually one-shot there, even with Headbutt. Here, once we get to the Sandshrew, we're going to use Dig because it is our strongest move, just hoping that we actually obey and use the move that we want. And here, instead, we go to sleep and the Rival knocks us out. There are tons of different random effects that can happen when you're disobedient, including randomly going to sleep, randomly hitting yourself in confusion, or simply not moving for a turn. In every case, they're just terrible, especially when you have a Pokemon that should just be able to get through these fights incredibly easily. But here on the second attempt, we do manage to knock everything out with a single hit, and with that, Rival 3 is done. But now on minimum battles, we've reached the point where we simply have to fight Misty. There are no other required trainers left in the game at this point. We can't access the Rock Tunnel section because we don't have Misty's badge, so we can't use Cut, and we can't fight Lieutenant Surge for the exact same reason. So it becomes entirely a question of whether or not we can find a way through this fight specifically. We may need to get at least one Swords Dance up and then just get some insane luck between her using X defense, maybe some critical hits. Not exactly sure, but we're gonna try it one time. Now, of course, Misty and her Starfish would completely crush Grossty Mama even in normal circumstances, but here we have to also be able to knock everything out. Now, she can go X Defend, which is very nice, but Bubble Beam is just going to destroy this Pokemon. We absolutely need something like an X Defend and then a good range on the next turn. So this time she X Defends turn 1 and we one-shot the Staryu, so now we just have to get through this Starmie, which also X Defends turn 1. We survive a hit, but we couldn't use the proper move, so we couldn't get through on the next turn. But what that does tell us is that with the right kind of luck, this is a possible fight. We really need to use Dig every time, and we really need that Starmie to actually use Water Gun, not Bubble Beam. It also seems reasonable that a critical hit will probably one-shot the Starmie. It's about an 8% chance there, but if we can ever get it, that will be enough to get through this one. And here, after 48 attempts on Misty, we finally get the range where we get 2 digs in a row on the Starmie, and it hit us with Water Gun so we could survive, and with that we get to level 27, but we also gain Obedience. The problem is we're only going to be obedient until level 30, because now we have to go through the entire Rock Tunnel, and the next trainer that gives us an increase to our Obedience is going to be Erica, and that fight could turn out just to be too difficult to get through. But we won't know until we get there, so let's go ahead and try to get into the next section. So here with 73 total resets and 3 TMs so far, we had a 41 minute and 29 second split on Misty after only a 3 minute and 57 second split on Brock. So we can see just how terrible that section was. But with that done, we can come over here and take on the Rapping Lass, who is one of the tougher trainers in the game, but because we have Stab in our Dig and we're faster than these Pokemon, they're easy one-hit KOs with Dig every single time. And as we make our way through the Rock Tunnel, we're really just waiting with bated breath to see which one of these battles is going to put us over level 30 and put us at risk of becoming disobedient. The Obedience will stay in until level 30. From level 31 is where we'll no longer be able to rely on our Pokemon to do what it's told. So we reach level 30 right here on the infamous Rock Tunnel Hiker, and there are still 2 more trainers that we have to fight even before we can get to Celadon City, and 1 required trainer inside of Erica's gym. So there's simply no way that we're going going to get there with Obedience intact, but hopefully being only one level above the threshold will keep us obedient enough that we can finally get through that. And sure enough, it's here against the legendary Clefairy girl that we reached level 31 and can no longer count on Obedience. Now with that being said, there's really just nothing else to do than to try and go take on Erica though, because we need to be able to get through this fight to get Obedience, and once we're obedient up to level 50 from Erica's rainbow badge, the rest of this run should be pretty straightforward. So it's just going to be a matter of getting through these two fights, which is probably going to be tedious and might be impossible, but we're just going to have to see. So we're going to simply save the game in front of Erica and let's give it a good attempt. Erica attempt number 1, we are simply going to go for anything and just get one shot by the Tangela. Are you kidding me? Now the problem here is that we're outsped by everything, and a critical hit Vine Whip is more than enough to simply one-shot us. We don't have any way to raise our speed other than to go take more battles. Now in theory we could go into something like the Rocket Game Corner in order to gain extra levels, but that's also going to increase our disobedience. However, I just don't see any option since we're so slow that Tangela is just going to two-shot us no matter what we do. There's no way to flinch it, there's no way to set up, so I think we just have to give up right here. Now the good news in the Rocket Game Corner is that most of these Pokemon should basically be one-hit KOs, so we might be consistent enough to get through these, but it's definitely not great that we have to take this route instead. So here instead, let's take on Jesse and James, where we have a nice type advantage against their poison types. We can simply go for moves like Bone Club even to just one-shot these Pokemon. If we use Dig instead, it's really not the end of the world, and we get an easy victory. But that brings us now to Giovanni, another trainer who shouldn't be hard per se, but let's just see. So first attempt against Giovanni, I'm going to use Dig on the Onix. That's a one-hit KO. We're trying to learn Focus Energy. We are not going to learn Focus Energy. And with that, we can simply go Bone Club on the Rhyhorn. It was a disobedient move, but it still worked. And here, Bone Club, and really any move, seems like a two-hit KO there on the Persian, and we get a pretty easy win. And now before we make our way over to rival number 4 inside of the Lavender Pokemon Tower, we should probably make our way back to Lieutenant Surge, because even though we're not obedient, he will however give us a badge boost in defense, and in certain cases that might actually be useful, especially against tough opponents that like to use physical moves. We get the trash can puzzle on the very first attempt, and now it's just trying to try Surge and see if we can dig him down. So first attempt against Lieutenant Surge, I'm simply going to try to use Dig. We disobeyed one turn, but then we use Dig and it's a one-hit KO. Easy victory right there. So 53 minutes and 21 seconds in, we have beaten 3 gym leaders, but it has been terrible. 76 resets up to this point in the game, primarily due to disobedience. We haven't had a single reset while we've been obedient in this entire run, so everything just comes down to the fact that this Pokemon, if it's traded back, it levels up too quickly. But with that third gym dodge down, we can get our Squirtle, and we can also teach our Pidgey how to fly, and now we can make our way over to the Pokemon Tower, where we can at least try our hand at rival number 4. In Pokemon Yellow, this is the last version of the rival before he has his fully evolved starter, and that means that, in theory at least, we should do reasonably well here. Let's find out. So Fearow was tough, but then we are basically in a one-hit KO range on all the rest of his Pokemon, and we easily get through on the first attempt in spite of the fact that we were on very low health going into the Eevee. But now we have to make our way up the tower, where fortunately this is Gen 1, so Levitate doesn't exist. So you can use ground type moves on these ghosts. They're going to be guaranteed one-hit KOs because of their weak defense and their poison typing. And with that being done, we can now take on our doppelganger, Ghosty Mama, Marowak itself. But since we've got the Swords Dance and it doesn't, I think this is going to be a fairly easy fight. Just 2 hits and we knock out the ghost, and it's on to Jesse and James, against whom yet again, if we can just set up one Swords Dance, I think we just sweep. And here, when we're paralyzed, we definitely want to use Bone Club if at all possible, since Dig can result in us being paralyzed underground. But there we go, we do get through that fight and get the victory. Now before we go back and try to take on Erica, we can come up here into the Silphco building, where there is one required trainer that has an Arbok. Yet again, since it's a poison type Pokemon, I feel pretty pretty good about our chances of getting through this one. And it still looks like our speed is just a little bit too low, so I'm simply going to go down to Koga's gym as well, where there are a couple of jugglers that we can fight, and those jugglers might just enable us to get through this section. So here, let's attempt Koga one time. We've intentionally come into this fight paralyzed, because otherwise he would simply use sleep powder against us over and over again. And here we can also set up something very, very special, which is if we get paralyzed while we're underground, we can actually become invincible due to a glitch in Gen 1. This would normally be pretty broken if we were actually in full control of Marowak, but because we're not, we simply are relying on luck for this one. So now here with the full setup and the fact that it can't actually damage us, we're simply trying to spam our moves and hit something that will allow us to win, and we beat Koga at level 40. So it takes a little bit of Gen 1 cheese there, but it is possible to beat Koga at our current level. That even gives us a badge boost in speed, which now should help us with the Erica fight. So let's get back there and try to beat her. Let's see if we can just manage to maybe get obedience back, in spite of the fact that we're already 10 levels over our last obedience threshold. And it's just kind of worth noting that the whole dig paralysis strat can be used basically by any Pokemon in order to beat even super high leveled opponents, but it's not perfect. And it's the logical strategy is simply that we would want to go into that fight paralyzed because we don't want to get the sleep status. And one of the easiest ways to avoid being put to sleep is to just already have another status on your Pokemon. But now that we've got a whopping 54 speed, let's get in here into the Erica fight again and see if we can just manage to get the luck to get through this one. So here I'm going to try to set up one Swords Dance and then take her down. From there, it's possible that one Swords Dance will be enough to knock these Pokemon out, particularly the Weepinbell and the Gloom. Given that they are grass poison types and neutrally affected by Dig, they might just give us the ranges at that point. So here Dig does one-shot the Weepinbell, and we just need to get the right move. She misses a Sleep Powder, but then lands the Petal Dance, and we get knocked out on the first attempt by Gloom. Still, this basically tells me that this fight at this point is in fact possible, and it's just a matter of getting the right ranges. But of course, possible does not mean easy, and we can see that with repeated attempts, this fight is still incredibly tough to get through, basically relying on perfect ranges with our Disobedience. And this is one of those situations that simply happens, where a fight that would be incredibly simple if our Pokemon simply obeyed our commands becomes borderline impossible because of the fact that we cannot get it to use the right moves. So here we get another run where we're back to the Gloom, and we do get Dig this time. So finally, after 22 attempts on Erica, we managed to beat her, getting to level 41. But now we can also get access to the move Thrash, which is kind of nice given our kind of physical attack focus, and we were able to get Obedience back. That is huge because now we can use this fact in order to just badge boost our speed, badge boost our defense, get higher attack, and hopefully get through these next gym leaders without too much difficulty. But we're up to 105 resets so far and 3 TMs up to this section of the game, so this really isn't going well. But now we do have a decision to make how to progress in the game. Do we go and try to fight Rival 5, or do we go and try to fight Blaine? Now in this one, I think it makes sense to go fight Blaine since ground is super effective against his Pokemon, and he does attack randomly in this version of the game. In Pokemon Red and Blue, he had Smart AI but suffered from using super potions while he was at full health, but in this version, he doesn't use Smart AI, but has a much stronger team and much better moves. Still, if we can manage to get enough boosts via our Swords Dance, I think we'll be able to one-shot his Pokemon, or at least get them in reasonable 2-hit ranges, but let's see if that's actually the case. And as we finish the quiz, we can just say Tombstoner Brothers as we get here into the Blaine fight. Let's see if we can beat him at our current level, 41. So here against Blaine, our first thing is going to be to see that a single flamethrower from the Ninetales just destroys us. We really want something like Tail Whip, maybe something like a quick attack in this situation so that we can start boosting up our attack stat. Now, I don't think there's any way that we're ever going to outspeed here outside of just ridiculous luck. So we're really just hoping that he doesn't hit us with strong moves and we don't get bad confusion luck. So here, after 3 Swords Dances, a single Bone Club knocks out that first Ninetales. Takedown knocks us out due to a critical hit on the next turn though from the Rapidash. Here we get Growl from Rapidash this time, allowing us to knock it out, and Arcanine goes for Reflect, but even with the Reflect, we nearly one-shot there with Dig, so we just needed slightly better luck, and I think we could have won on that attempt. So back to the Arcanine again, we get another Dig on it, he goes for a Super Potion, and this time we knock him out, so 11 attempts to beat Blaine, but we get a badge boost in Special now. It's taken an hour and 20 minutes to get to this point, and 115 resets, but we at least are making some progress here. And now with this setup, I think our badge boost glitch can start to actually make a big impact, both in terms of our speed and in terms of our special, so that we can actually survive against tough opponents. So now we have no choice but to go and fight against Rival 5 inside of Silphco. He's the only required battle that is currently available to us. So here we make it to the Rival's room, and let's see if this is enough to get through this. So Rival 5 leads off with his Sand Slash and immediately goes for a Sand attack, but after 1 Swords Dance, we are outspeeding this Pokemon. Now we need some pretty good accuracy luck at this point because of the fact that he simply hit us with so many accuracy drops, but once we do hit him, we are getting 1-hit KOs here. Cloyster is kind of mixed where it's either going to go for Clamp, Withdraw, or Aurora Beam, and of course Withdraw is not great, but if we could land hits there, we might still be able to get through with that kind of luck. Now the problem is we're leveling up just after the Sand Slash, so I'm actually going to give myself a single rare candy right here to get to level 43, and let's just see if this affects things at all. The reason we want this is because we're losing our badge boosts after the first Sand Slash, but if we can keep our badge boost glitch on, we might just have a good enough range to get through the rest of the team. Here we get a 2-hit KO on the Cloyster after a critical hit. Dig, once it finally manages to hit, is going to knock out the Magneton. We level up right here on Kadabra, but Dig is a 1-hit KO, and now Flareon gets us in Fire Spin, and there was just nothing that we could do on such low health. So I think we just have to get a run where we get through the first Sand Slash without a Sand attack. It's easier said than done given that he's basically 1 in 3 to use it, but he could just go for Swift 3 times in a row technically. And once we get that kind of luck, we're basically one-shotting everything here until we get to the Kadabra and level up, and Flareon hits us with an Ember, which knocks us out on that attempt. Now it's also worth noting that enemy status moves like Sand Attack have a 25% chance to miss, so if we ever get that level of luck, we could get through just based on that as well. And this time we get a Sand Attack from the Flareon, so finally we managed to get through at level 44, and we have beaten that rival. So from here, I don't expect Jesse and James or Giovanni to be particularly difficult, so let's just make it through these fights really easily and get on to Sabrina. So at the very least, we can say that Swords Dance has allowed this Pokemon to get on minimum battles through 6 gyms and Silphco. Now we have to deal with Sabrina though, and she's guaranteed to outspeed us with all of her Pokemon. So this becomes a really hit and miss sort of situation where we don't necessarily have a great way to get through her. This is one spot where we really wish we learned the move Swift, since after the Swords Dances, Swift would just allow us to get through that incredibly easily, but unfortunately it's just not part of our moveset. So instead we're just gonna have to rely on some good luck with accuracy, so let's see if we can manage to get through Sabrina. So Sabrina attempt number 1, her first Abra is only going to use Flash against us. There's not much we can do there, but we can set up all of the Swords Dances and then just try to hit with our attacks. If we do hit, it's going to be a 1-hit KO on the first 2 Pokemon. Alakazam comes out and we get 2 recovers in a row, so we beat Sabrina on the first attempt. 1 hour, 28 minutes, and 33 seconds to get through that one. 124 resets so far, 3 TMs, but we're on to Giovanni. Giovanni, and then on to the League. The League is probably where we're gonna hit a wall here if I have to guess, especially just the first fight against Lorelei is going to be nightmarish, but if we can find a way through it, we might just have a chance. First things first though, we have to deal with Giovanni, the self-proclaimed greatest trainer in the world, and I think we're gonna show him that we're the better ground type. So Giovanni attempt number 1, I'm going to start off by trying to set up these swords dances here. We're not really scared of something like dig, we really just don't want fissure. Here, Bone Meringue is a new move on our moveset that we've learned, and I'm going to use this move because it's a signature move of the Marowak line, and while it's only 90% accurate, it does have the potential to be pretty darn strong. Now the biggest issue here is going to be getting a run where we don't get a critical hit from this Doug trio. It has a very high critical hit chance, and we want to avoid that crit if at all possible. Here we can simply use one dig to knock out the Persian. Here I'm going to go for a Bone Meringue on this Nidoqueen. It's an easy KO. We can go for Bone Meringue on the Nidoking, easy KO right there. And now we're going to outspeed the Rhydon where we get a one-hitter with dig. So an hour 31 and 4 seconds to get through that section. 126 resets now, still 3 TMs. Not doing too bad, gotta say. I'm kind of impressed by how Marowak's basically gotten through all of this so far. So with that, there are only 6 required battles left in the game, but they are the 6 toughest battles in the game by far. We have to find a way to get through Rival 6 first, so let's get over there and try this one out. We're going to level up midway through this fight no matter what we do, so we're just going to have to see if we can get the right ranges. So first things first, I think we have to set up all the swords dance, and then we're just hoping to be able to knock this Pokemon out. A Bone Meringue should be more than enough right there. Here, I honestly don't know what we should do. Dig is probably the best move against Execute, and it does one-shot. Next, we get the Cloyster. We're going to simply go for Dig here as it goes for a couple of withdraws, but the fact that we leveled up right there caused us to be slower than Cloyster. I don't think we can get through in that situation. So what we're going to do is give ourselves another rare candy right here with the hope of simply not leveling up at that point in the battle. So on the second attempt here, we're going to go for the same strategy, Swords Dance 3 times, and now Bone Meringue is the way to go. We don't want to give it another turn to hit us with Swift while we're underground. We will simply dig on the Execute. We can go for a dig on the Cloyster. That's a nice one-hit KO, and here, sure, Swift hits us underground, but Magneton doesn't have great attacks, so we one-shot it, but now we've leveled up. Kadabra comes out and goes Psychic and simply destroys us from there. Fortunately, Kadabra does have other moves. It doesn't have to just go all in on trying to knock us out, but we're gonna have to find our way through this one. So on the next attempt, we're back to Kadabra with much better health, but his Psybeam still does massive damage, and we get a Fire Spin that knocks us out from the Flareon. Now on this attempt, we get Stun Spored by the Execute, but because we were paralyzed and we used Dig and got fully paralyzed, we now become invincible. So yet again, while this is a pretty tough fight, it is technically possible now to get through this. Swift can still hit us. The game simply thinks that we're underground. It's one of those glitches that will come up occasionally in these sorts of runs. You don't necessarily set it up intentionally, but hey, if it happens, then it happens. The only other thing to do is to sit here and just keep resetting over and over again. So several attempts later, we get a Leer from the Flareon, and that finally gives us the turn that we needed to knock it out legitimately. So there are technically 2 ways to get through that fight. You can either get a good move out of that final Flareon, since it doesn't have a super effective move, it's not like it's just going to use its fire type moves, or you can get a paralysis and use the paralysis dig strat. And so just like that, we are onto the League, but this is the point where this run is going to get insanely hard, as if it hasn't been really difficult already, as evidenced by the fact that we have 136 resets so far. But now we have to take on Lorelei, and Lorelei's team is perfectly made to completely destroy this Pokemon. That being said, there is in fact a way that I think we can get through. It's simply going to require a little bit of luck. Still, I wouldn't be surprised if we simply have to drop all of the rare candies right here in order to get through this first member of the Elite Four, just because after that, really, we're not too worried about Bruno. We're not too worried about Agatha, given that we have super effective moves against most of her Pokemon, and Lance is just going to be tough no matter what we do. But we want to make sure that we're fully prepared for this section of the game, especially because of the fact that we don't have a good matchup against the very first member of the league. So we're going to make our way to the power plant to get one more rare candy, as well as the max elixir and the PP up that are there. So here, let's take our first attempt against Lorelei and see how she goes at her current level. And if we need, we're going to just start slamming rare candies right here. So attempt 1 against Lorelei, her dugong is definitely faster than us, but there is a special thing about this dugong's AI. It has a 40% chance to disregard type effectiveness and just attack randomly, something that was added in Pokemon Yellow to stop it from causing infinite battles. So here, after the first turn, we can have a pretty high chance of it using rest on turn 2, and once we get that luck, we might just be able to get through this one. So this one likely relies on us getting the kind of luck where she tries to use rest even on turn 1, which yet again can happen a reasonable percentage of the time, and once we get that luck, we may just be able to start sweeping. The problem is simply that we're so slow, and we definitely need to be able to get our speed up with the badge boost glitch here. Now the clear problem is that we're leveling up right after the dugong, so we need to drop at least one rare candy here just to make this one even borderline possible. And here, with 3 swords dances set up, we can one-shot the dugong, we one-shot the cloister. Here we're also going to have a very good range against this Slowbro, but then we level up on Jinx and it's only going to go for Ice Punch, which is 100% accurate. So the problem here, I think, is the fact that we level up just before Jinx, and that means that we're not going to be able to get through this fight at our current level. So we're going to slam a couple more rare candies here just to see if it makes a difference in when we level up in this fight. We will not learn Rage as much as the game would like us to at this point. Let's get back into this at level 55. And here at level 55, we just barely level up before the Jinx, but even with our badge boost up to this point, we still would have been outsped. So I think we're going to have to gain even more levels to make this one reasonable. So now attempting this one at level 58, we just have to get a rest turn 2 from this dugong, and then we should be able to boost up our speed enough to get at least through this first Pokemon, but we still only have 109 speed at this point. So it's still not going to quite be enough to get through this section, I don't think, since Jinx still has 120 speed and we have no way to outspeed there. Now there is one possibility, which is to get Dugong to use an Aurora Beam on us turn 1, and Aurora Beam has a chance to lower our attack stat. If we get that attack drop, then in theory at least, we could get an extra badge boost, and that extra badge boost could allow us to eventually get through this fight. So now we're basically in a situation where we want to reset anytime that we do not get an Aurora Beam turn 1 that drops our attack stat. So here we did get an Aurora Beam that dropped our attack. She goes for rest turn 2. So now we are faster than everything on our team. We can simply knock out the Dugong. We still managed to knock out Cloyster. It's a one-hitter on Slowbro. We outspeed Jinx and one-shot it. Now we've leveled up and we've made it to Lapras, where we're at a speed tie, but we outspeed and we get the one-hit KO. So at level 59, we do in fact beat Lorelei with our incredibly lucky Marowak. So we're all the way up to 163 resets and 3 TMs at this point, but we'll take it. We're simply going to heal up and get into the Bruno fight. And the good news is we still have 3 rare candies in the bag, so we can kind of manage our XP situation as we get into both Lance and the champion, and hopefully this will be enough. We'll just have to find out. So first things first, Bruno. So Bruno's pretty easy. We're just going to set up the 3 swords dances on this first Onyx. It even screeches us to give us another badge boost, and that is a one-hit KO. We can now one-shot the Hitmonchan. I'm going to go dig on this Hitmonlee. It's no problem, but we probably want to stick with Bone Meringue just so that we avoid giving them extra turns. We one-shot there on the Onyx, and finally on the Machamp, it's an easy one-hit KO. So once you get the swords dances set up, that entire team is just a cakewalk. But now it's time to take on Agatha. She could be really trolly, or we could get through her on the first attempt. Let's find out. So here against Agatha, we're going to start off by setting up Swords Dance. And of course, she can try to confuse us. She can do all kinds of stuff here, but we just want to get the setup right at the beginning of the fight if at all possible. Mega Drain does massive damage, but Bone Meringue allows us to break her substitute. A single Thrash will knock out the Golbat, but unfortunately Thrash locks us in for multiple turns, so we need a little bit better luck than this. So the first real question is, will we just one-shot there against the Gengar with Bone Meringue? And we do. So in that case, I think our best strategy is simply to knock out the first Gengar as quick as possible and then use Thrash on the Golbat. So that's what we're going to do right here. We break her substitute, and now she's paralyzed us, so technically we can go for Dig and try to get the range right there. In this case, we happened to just get the luck to hit her and knock her out, but now we're fully paralyzed, and that basically means that we're invincible at this point. Now we do become fully confused at some point, but now we can go for Bone Meringue here. We're just hoping not to hit ourselves in confusion. We knock that one out. Here we hit ourselves. We do not knock ourselves out, but we get knocked out by the Lick. Let's try this again. So Mega Drain's always going to do good damage, but we can one-shot the Gengar after that. Here we get hit by Toxic, which is just terrible. That is not what we wanted to see in that situation. So this just makes me think that Thrash is no longer a very good move, and we should replace it with something else. And there's clearly no better candidate than TM15 Hyper Beam. With Hyper Beam, we should now be able to boost up our attack stat and simply knock these Pokemon out. And since this has already taken 2 hours and 4 minutes, it wasn't like we were in such a rush to not get this TM. So now we can simply see what the range is with Hyper Beam after a Swords Dance. We get a one-hit KO there on that Golbat. Now we simply need to land a hit here on the first Gengar in order to knock it out. It gives us a Lick, but we do get through right there. And now I'm going to set up the rest of my Swords Dances right here, just hoping that we can get our attack damage out as much as possible. So we one-shot the Arbok. Here we're going to Dig and one-shot the Haunter. Out comes the final Gengar with a Psychic, and a critical hit knocks us out. So here once again we're going to set up one Swords Dance and then just Hyper Beam down the Golbat. We will then go for just Bone Meringue. It's the best play here since we can break the substitute, and as long as we hit, it's going to one-shot either way. Now we can simply go for Dig if we want here on these Pokemon the rest of the way. I don't even think we necessarily need all of the Swords Dances set up here. We just need to get the luck not to be wrapped for infinite turns. And here, this is where Bone Meringue really shines, because as long as it can hit, it's going to do decent enough damage to get through these Pokemon. The problem is just that we can't outspeed anything. We're always going to be slower than all of her Gengars, just because we can't even get enough badge boosts in order to make it so that we would ever outspeed. However, in this one, we get paralyzed by the Arbok, and so since you would technically want to sit here and try to Dig anyway, I'm just going to use Dig. If we get the luck to get the paralysis while we're underground, we'll just take it, and there we go. We knock her out. Easy victory. So here we've made it all the way to Lance, but this is the one that I'm also very nervous about. He has quote-unquote smart AI, which basically means that with his very first Gyarados, he's only going to spam the move Hydro Pump. Hydro Pump has technically a 20% chance to miss. So it's really a question of how many times do we have to set up Swords Dance in order to A, outspeed the Gyarados, and B, knock it out with a single Hyper Beam. The other possibility, of course, is to take advantage of our broader move pool. We have access to the move Blizzard here, and if we teach Blizzard over Bone Meringue, since technically it's not really a required move, we have Dig on the moveset, we could go for a Freeze in the case that we get a miss, and try to use that as our way to get our setup off and then get through this fight. We're also incredibly close to a level up, so we might not even want to set up on the very first Gyarados. We might just want to use Blizzard and then try to knock it out. So first things first, let's look at the speed. It has 108 speed and we have 83. So even if we dropped our 3 rare candies, we're never going to outspeed here. We do get the miss with the first Hydro Pump, but we cannot get the freeze. I think that's the only way we're ever going to get through this, is if we get the freeze on this very first Pokemon. So I'm simply going to sit here and spam the Blizzard, hoping to get a freeze on Gyarados. Once we get it, I think we have a reasonable chance to get through this fight though. So here at 2 hours and 12 minutes, we finally get the freeze on this Gyarados. And at this point, I'm simply going to use Hyper Beam in order to knock it out. It takes 2 Hyper Beams from there. Next up is this Dragonair, and the good thing is that this Dragonair only knows electric and normal type moves. So after we set up the Swords Dances, we will outspeed here, and we can simply even go for Dig, I think, in one shot there. We're going to outspeed the next one, where Dig will be a one-hit KO. Out comes this Aerodactyl, which is going to be faster than us, but Wing Attack does barely nothing. Blizzard isn't quite a one-hitter there, but we do manage to knock it out. Finally, however, we level up just before the Dragonite, and it misses a Blizzard, allowing us to hit the Hyper Beam and win. Oh, he had a 10% chance to miss there. That was God tier. I'm sorry. That was just too lucky to get through that, but we'll take it. We'll just have to take it. So with that being done, we can now make our way into the champion fight. I'm going to avoid the rare candies for now because I'm very interested to see where exactly we level up. If we can manage to level up just after the Exeggutor, then we would be able to set up our badge boosts on the Magneton, and that would be ideal. That would actually enable us, I think, to outspeed against the Cloyster and the Flareon and guarantee to win. So I think what we're going to have to do is go for some good luck ranges on the first 3 Pokemon, and we might be able to make this work. Let's just see. So here, attempt number 1 at the champion. I'm going to go Blizzard on his first Sand Slash. We're kind of hoping to freeze it, but really, as long as it just does decent damage, we should be fine here. Next up is the Alakazam, which is just going to attack randomly. We could get Kinesis, we could get Recover. If we get either of those moves, I think we can just take it down with a single Hyper Beam even. And then it's just on to the Exeggutor, where we're just going to be hoping for a little bit of luck. We get a critical hit on the second attempt here, and Psybeam doesn't one-shot us, so we get the one-hit KO there, and we level up here on the Exeggutor. So here I'm going to go for Blizzard, kind of hoping for a freeze. Now, in the absence of the freeze, I'm going to use 1 Swords Dance and go into Hyper Beam. That will one-shot that Pokemon, but we're still too slow to get through the Magneton. So the fact that we're leveling up right there on the Exeggutor is kind of interesting, because it means that really we just need a good luck range on the first 2 Pokemon, and if we could ever score a freeze on that Exeggutor, we would be perfect in this section. So back to Exeggutor here, we use the Blizzard, but unfortunately we just cannot get a freeze on this Pokemon. And while technically Leech Seed does have a 10% chance to miss, I don't think we can keep banking on 10%ers to get through this one. So this time we get here with a little bit more health, so I'm gonna try to go for the YOLO strat here of just going into Hyper Beam the rest of the way. We outspeed the Cloyster and one-shot it, and the Flareon is the last Pokemon. We dig, we lose 10 HP to a Leech Seed, but then we knock it out on the next turn with Dig. At level 65, we have beaten the champion with Ghosty Mama. It turns out that yes, it is technically possible to beat the entire game on minimum battles with a Marowak with access to the move Swords Dance. But was this good? No. We finished the entire run with 203 resets and 5 TMs to beat the entire game, giving us a final score of 74.7 on my tier list and a final time of 2 hours, 19 minutes, and 36 seconds. Terrible. Terrible. It's really inconsistent at the beginning because of Disobedience. You're inconsistent all the way up to Erica, and then it's really inconsistent at the end, where you have to get a certain kind of luck against Lorelei, a certain kind of luck against Lance, and a certain kind of luck against the champion. This could have turned out far worse than it actually did, but it's always interesting just to see what it takes to beat the game on minimum battles with a Pokemon, and this is a case where it goes from literally impossible to just impractical. Anyway, that does it for this one. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.